Have you ever wondered why the world's most powerful democracies are suddenly putting pressure on Israel? The EU and UK have started taking up diplomatic and economic arms against a country that has been receiving open support from Western powers for decades. The reason is the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, which is no longer just a regional conflict, but has become a test of global conscience. According to the latest report of the United Nations, the situation in Gaza is so bad that if aid does not arrive in 2 more days, more than 14,000 newborn babies may die. And this was the point that pulled Europe and the UK out of silence. Last week, the European Union announced a re-evaluation of the free trade agreement signed with Israel in 2000, in which possible violations of the Human Rights Clause will be investigated. The UK, on its part, has halted trade negotiations and imposed sanctions on Israeli settlers and some defense-linked entities that have been involved in spreading violence in the West Bank. This diplomatic move is not just symbolic, but strategic, because for the first time, Israel's traditional allies are joining the list of countries putting pressure on it. UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron said that Israel must comply with international humanitarian law. Otherwise, its global standing will be weakened. According to reports by the BBC and The Guardian, there is also domestic political pressure behind UK's decision because in the recent local elections, voters questioned the government's neutrality on the Gaza issue. Meanwhile, the European Commission has made it clear that the trade framework that gives Israel tariff-free access cannot be considered valid as long as it does not comply with basic human rights. This issue is not just limited to Gaza or Israel's sovereignty. It has become a major example of the conflict between international law, accountability, and public opinion. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have claimed that Israel's blockades and aerial strikes have now crossed all thresholds of a humanitarian emergency. Electricity, food, and water have almost run out in Gaza, and hospitals have neither medicines nor oxygen cylinders. The UNICEF report states that 9 out of every 10 children are now at risk of PTSD and chronic malnutrition. The question arises whether this diplomatic pressure is merely symbolic or will it lead to change on the ground. And if these diplomatic steps continue to escalate, is the decades-long alliance between Israel and the West on the verge of collapse? When longtime allies of Israel such as the UK and the EU openly impose sanctions against it, the question arises, how will Israel respond to this pressure? Benjamin Netanyahu's government has described it as unilateral and politically motivated, and has said that Israel will not accept moral certificates from anyone regarding its security. But the mood on the ground is different. Voices of protest are growing within Israeli civil society as well. According to reports in Haaretz and the Times of Israel, several retired generals and former diplomats have called the situation in Gaza a strategic disaster that is causing irreparable damage to Israel's international legitimacy. Meanwhile, the U.S. position is now under greater scrutiny. Although the Biden administration continues to provide military support, internal criticism is growing, especially from progressive Democrats and student-led protests. Palestine solidarity demonstrations are taking place at Columbia University, Harvard, and several Ivy League campuses, and it looks like a new civil rights moment. The debate on weapons supply has also begun in the U.S. Congress, and some lawmakers have demanded to conditionalize the arms transfer. NATO allies are also divided into 2 parts. Germany and France are leaning towards public condemnation, while some Eastern European nations are still standing in support of Israel. But the most important role in the whole picture is being played by public opinion. On the one hand, mainstream media is now making Gaza's devastation major headlines. On the other hand, campaigns like #FreePalestine and #CeasefireNow have gone viral on social media. Instagram Reels, TikTok explainers, and YouTube videos are now shaping people's political opinions. And from here begins a silent global awakening that perhaps this is not just a fight between Israel and Palestine, but a fight between state power versus human rights. And with this change in narrative, political pressure is increasing. Talking about India, the government here is still speaking in neutral diplomatic language, but polarization is clearly visible in the Indian public. People are divided on social media. Some are with Israel, while some are highlighting the tragedy of Gaza. But one thing is universal. That is the call of humanity, which has risen above every religion, every border, every ideology. Now the question is, will this diplomatic and public pressure bring a change in Israel's strategy? Will the EU and UK limit themselves to only trade deals and sanctions, or will they take more stringent steps like arms embargo, international legal action, or UNGA resolutions? And most importantly, will this moment go down in history as the moment when world powers finally took a stand for humanity? In Dhruv Rathi style, this is not just a regional issue, but it is a test of global ethics. Does the world really give priority to human rights, or only to strategic alliances and oil diplomacy? The answer will be known in the coming weeks. But today, there is a need to stay informed, ask questions, and take the side of humanity instead of keeping quiet in the name of neutrality. Because when the lives of children, oxygen of hospitals, and bread of cities are at stake, then silence is also a stand.